All right, this is going to be a follow-up to the last video, which was adding integers or adding with negative numbers. Now we're going to do subtracting with negative numbers. We're going to see some similar concepts, same approach, and then we're going to put this all together also. So we're going to see the similarities and differences between adding and subtracting negative numbers. So the first one, we just have a basic subtraction problem. We have 1 minus 2, which we had in the previous example, but we'll go over that, how that relates to addition. We had 1 minus 2, which is going to give us negative 1. Why is that negative 1? Because that's our leading number is smaller than the number that we're subtracting by. B, it's the same problem, but it's switched over. So the leading number is now larger because we have 2 in front and the 1 behind it. So that's just going to give us 1. Okay? Now, C, we have negative 1 minus 2. What are we going to do? We're actually going to add when we're subtracting negative numbers. These numbers are actually would be considered both negative, negative 1, negative 2. When we're subtracting two negative numbers like that, we're actually going to add them and keep it negative. So that's going to be negative 3. Now D we have negative 1 minus negative 2. Again, we can do just like we did in our previous example with adding, and we can put a parentheses there. We can also figure out what we have to do here. Remember when I talked about the fact that the negative sign will trump the positive sign? Well, in this case, if we have two negatives, so let's just review for a second. If we have a positive sign and then a negative sign, let's say like this, that positive sign becomes negative. So this equals that. That positive sign is going to be negative. Now, if we have a negative sign in front of the negative sign, so we have a double negative, that's going to become positive. Okay, so this carries over, trumps that, and that turns a negative. This carries over and makes this positive. Sometimes people like to look at this, if an easy way to remember it is that these two negatives, they cross and make a positive sign. So you take this, you take this, you carry that over, it crosses, and it makes a positive sign. Okay? So we can rewrite D like this. And now we're back to addition. And this is what we're going to cover in the next videos. We're going to look at the commonalities and the differences between adding and subtracting negative numbers. Because sometimes when you're adding negative numbers, you're actually subtracting. And sometimes when you're subtracting negative numbers, you're adding. Just like in this case, when you have two negatives and you're subtracting by two negatives, well, actually we're doing an addition. So what do we do when we're adding a negative number by one negative number? Well, we subtract, and then we keep the sign of the negative, or the sign of the larger number. The sign of the larger number in this case is 2, so we're just going to subtract, and that's just going to give us 1. So the answer is 1. So just as we did in the previous video, what we could do on our homework or on our test is just write down our reference, just a little bit smaller, so we have a reference to our rules with just a simple problem. There you go. And those are going to be your rules for subtraction. Same kind of set of 4. You could write both of them for one for subtraction, one for addition. But either way, I think actually once you start to see the kind of pattern going and you start to familiarize yourself, you might only have to write one. Sometimes I've had students that just, when they do subtraction, it trips them up a little bit, but they understand the addition. But again, remember that they coincide. So the next video, I'm going to show you where they coincide, because there is some cross-pollination between them. And then once you see the similarities and the differences, it's easier to conceive of the whole kind of system there. So again, appreciate you for watching. Thank you.